Welcome, viewers, to a night of unsettling tales. I'm Oliver Dread, your spectral host, guiding you through the shadows of solitude. Tonight, we explore the eerie feeling of being home alone as darkness falls. What whispers echo from empty rooms? Before we begin, please like and subscribe to support our chilling stories. Now, let the tale of solitary dread begin. Whispers in the dark. I've never been the type to believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, but what happened to me last month has me questioning everything. I'm 25 now, but this story goes back to when I was 8 years old. I've kept it to myself all these years, but I need to get it off my chest. It was a regular summer night in our old house in rural Michigan. My parents were out for their weekly date night, and my older sister was babysitting me. She was 16 at the time, and more interested in talking to her boyfriend on the phone than watching me, so I was left to entertain myself. I remember it was hot that night. We didn't have AC, just a bunch of fans scattered around the house. I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep despite the heat when I first heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible over the whirring of the fan. At first, I thought it was just the wind or maybe my imagination. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. It sounded like it was coming from my closet. Hello, it's soft and childlike. I froze, my heart racing. I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again. Can you hear me? I was terrified but also curious. It sounded like a kid, maybe my age. I gathered all my courage and whispered back, "Who's there?" There was a pause, then, "I'm lonely. Will you play with me?" I know it sounds crazy, but at that moment, I wasn't scared anymore. The voice sounded so sad, so desperate for company. Without thinking, I got out of bed and walked towards the closet. As I got closer, the whispers got more excited. "Yes, come closer. Let's play." I reached for the closet door handle, my hand shaking slightly. Just as I was about to open it, I heard my sister calling from downstairs. "Tommy, what are you doing up there?" I jumped, suddenly snapping back to reality. What was I doing? I was about to open my closet door in the middle of the night because I heard a voice. It didn't make any sense. And nothing. I called back, quickly jumping into bed and pulling the covers over my head. I didn't hear the whispers again that night, and eventually I fell asleep. The next morning, I convinced myself it was all a dream or my imagination running wild. But here's the thing that's been haunting me all these years. A few days after that night, my mom was cleaning my room and decided to reorganize my closet. When she opened it, she found a small, old-fashioned toy soldier right at the front, standing upright as if it had been placed there deliberately. She asked me about it, but I had never seen it before. It wasn't mine, and neither of my parents recognized it. My sister swore she didn't put it there either. We eventually just shrugged it off as one of those weird, unexplainable things. Maybe it had always been there, and we just never noticed it. But I knew, deep down, that it hadn't been there before that night. We moved out of that house a year later for unrelated reasons. As we were packing, I looked for that toy soldier, curious to see it again, but it was gone, vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. I'm sharing this now because last week I was helping my parents clean out their attic, and I found a box of old photos. In one of them, taken in our old house, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the background, barely visible in the shadows of my open closet door, was what looked like a small, blurry figure of a child. I don't know what to believe anymore. Was it all just a coincidence? A child's overactive imagination combined with a few weird occurrences? Or was there really something in my closet that night, something that wanted to play? I may never know the truth, but one thing's for sure. I always make sure my closet door is firmly shut before I go to sleep, even now. The Uninvited Guest. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but I need to get it off my chest. It happened about 2 months ago, and I still have trouble sleeping at night. I'm a 25-year-old guy living alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of Boston. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place on the second floor of an old building. It was a Wednesday night, and I had just gotten home from a late shift at the restaurant where I work. It was around 1 a.m., and I was exhausted. I remember thinking how quiet the building was as I climbed the stairs to my floor. That should have been my first clue something was off. Usually, I can hear my neighbor's TV through the walls, but that night, it was dead silent. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, not bothering to turn on the lights. I just wanted to crash on my bed. As I was taking off my shoes, I heard a faint sound. It was like scratching? I froze, listening intently. There it was again, coming from my bedroom. My heart started racing. I lived alone, and I definitely didn't have any pets. I told myself it was probably just a mouse or something. We'd had problems with them in the building before. Still, I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. I grabbed my phone, turning on the flashlight app. Slowly, I made my way towards the bedroom. The scratching had stopped, but now I could hear something else. It sounded like breathing, heavy, ragged breathing. I stood outside my bedroom door, my hand shaking as I reached for the knob. Part of me wanted to run, to get out of the apartment and call the cops, but another part needed to know what was in there. I pushed the door open, shining my phone light into the room. At first, I didn't see anything out of place. Then my light caught something moving in the corner. Two eyes reflected the light, glowing in the darkness. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Whatever it was big. Too big to be a mouse or even a cat. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I could make out a hunched figure crouched in the corner. I ran. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. I sprinted for the front door, fumbling with the lock with shaking hands. I could hear movement behind me, heavy footsteps getting closer. Just as I got the door open, I felt something brush against my back. I didn't look back. I ran out into the hallway, down the stairs, and out of the building. I didn't stop until I reached the lit street corner where I finally paused, gasping for air. I called the cops from a 24-hour diner down the street. They searched my apartment, but found nothing. No intruder, no signs of forced entry. They suggested it might have been my imagination, or maybe I'd left a window open and an animal had gotten in. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. I couldn't stay in that apartment anymore. I moved out the next day, crashing on a friend's couch until I found a new place. I told my landlord some BS about a job transfer. How could I explain the real reason? I'm in a new apartment now, on the other side of the city. So far, I haven't heard any strange noises here. But I can't shake this feeling that it's not over. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I swear I can hear that heavy breathing again. And every time I enter a dark room, I half expect to see those glowing eyes staring back at me. I don't know what was in my apartment that night. I don't want to know. But I can't forget the way that figure was hunched in the corner, or how it moved so quickly when I ran. I'm writing this as a warning. Always trust your instincts. If something feels off in your home, don't investigate. Just get out. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows, waiting for you to let your guard down. The unexpected visitor. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after what happened last week, I can't shake the feeling that I need to warn others. I'm a 22-year-old guy living in a small town in Oregon. My parents were out of town for the weekend, visiting my grandma, so I had the house to myself. Nothing unusual, right? Friday night, I was just chilling, playing some video games and enjoying the quiet. It was around 11 p.m. when I heard a knock at the door. At first, I thought I was imagining things. We don't get many visitors, especially not this late. I paused my game and listened. There it was again, a soft, almost hesitant knock. I got up, feeling a bit uneasy. We don't have a peephole, so I called out, "Who is it?" No answer. I opened the door slightly, keeping the chain on. There was a man standing there, probably in his mid-40s, wearing a plain t-shirt and jeans. He looked normal, but something about his eyes made me uncomfortable. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound confident. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hi there, I'm John, an old friend of your parents. I was just passing through town and thought I'd stop by to say hello. Are they home?" My heart started racing. My parents never mentioned a John, and they usually tell me if they're expecting someone. I hesitated, then said, "Sorry, they're not home right now. They're out of town." His smile faltered for a second, then returned, wider than before. Oh, that's too bad. When will they be back? I'd love to catch up with them. I didn't want to give him any information, so I just shrugged. Not sure, sorry. I can tell them you stopped by, though. He nodded, but didn't move. That's all right. Say it's pretty late. Do you mind if I come in and use your bathroom? It's been a long drive. Every instinct told me not to let this guy in. Sorry, I don't feel comfortable with that. There's a gas station just down the road that has a public restroom. His expression changed instantly. The smile disappeared, replaced by something cold and angry. Listen, kid, I know your parents aren't home. Why don't you just let me in? We can have a nice chat. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart pounding. I heard him jiggling the doorknob, then banging on the door. Open up. I just want to talk. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. As I was talking to the dispatcher, I heard a crash from the living room. He had broken the window and was climbing in. I locked myself in the bathroom, still on the phone. I could hear him moving around the house, calling out in a sing-song voice, come out, wherever you are." Those few minutes felt like hours. Finally, I heard sirens approaching. The footsteps in the house stopped. Then I heard the sound of running and a car speeding away. The police arrived moments later. They searched the house and the surrounding area, but found no trace of the man. They took my statement and increased patrols in the neighborhood, but he was gone. I later found out that there had been similar incidents in nearby towns. A man claiming to know the homeowners, trying to gain entry. In one case, he succeeded, and the family's teenage daughter went missing for 3 days before being found, traumatized but alive. I can't stop thinking about what might have happened if I had let him in, or if I hadn't been able to call for help. I'm sharing this as a warning. Trust your instincts and never open the door to strangers, no matter how normal they might seem. Stay safe out there, everyone. The shadow in the hallway. I've always been a skeptic when it comes to paranormal stuff, but what happened to me last month has me questioning everything I thought I knew. I'm a 26-year-old guy living alone in a small apartment in Seattle. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place on the 3rd floor of an old building downtown. It started on a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from a late shift at the bar where I work. It was around 2 a.m., and I was exhausted. I remember thinking how quiet the building was as I unlocked my door. That should have been my first clue something was off. Usually, I can hear my neighbor's TV through the walls, but that night it was dead silent. I didn't turn on the lights when I got in, not wanting to shock my tired eyes. I just used the dim light from the street lamp outside to navigate to my bedroom. As I passed the hallway that leads to my bathroom, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, seemed to move. I froze. My heart started racing, but I told myself it was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. I turned to look directly down the hallway, but there was nothing there. Just the usual shadows cast by the streetlight. Shaking it off, I went to bed. But I couldn't shake this uneasy feeling, like I was being watched. The next few nights were uneventful, and I almost forgot about the incident. Then, on Saturday night, it happened again. This time, I was wide awake, having just finished a movie on my laptop. I got up to get a glass of water, and as I passed the hallway, I saw it again. A shadow, moving independently of any light source, sliding along the wall. I stopped and stared, my blood running cold. The shadow seemed to notice me too. It stopped moving, and for a moment, we were locked in this bizarre standoff. Then, slowly, it began to move towards me. I'd like to say I bravely stood my ground, but the truth is, I bolted. I ran out of my apartment and didn't stop until I reached the building's lobby. I spent the rest of the night at a 24-hour diner, trying to convince myself I was just seeing things. But it kept happening. Every few nights, I'd catch glimpses of that shadow. Sometimes in the hallway, sometimes in my bedroom doorway, once even in the bathroom mirror. Each time, it seemed to get a little bolder, staying visible a little longer, moving a little closer. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was stress, or lack of sleep, or some weird effect of the lighting in my apartment. I even had my eyes checked, thinking it might be some kind of visual problem. But deep down, I knew this was something else. The breaking point came last week. I woke up in the middle of the night, that feeling of being watched stronger than ever. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw it. The shadow was at the foot of my bed, looming over me. But this time, it wasn't just a flat shadow on the wall. It had depth, substance. I could make out the vague shape of a head, shoulders, arms reaching towards me. I've never been so terrified in my life. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, this thing hovering over me paralyzed with fear. Then, just as I thought my heart might explode from sheer terror, it vanished. Not faded, not moved away, just blinked out of existence. I moved out the next day. Crashed on a friend's couch until I could find a new place. I told my landlord some bullshit about a job transfer. How could I explain the real reason? I'm in a new apartment now, on the other side of the city. So far, I haven't seen any strange shadows here. But I can't shake this feeling that it's not over. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I swear I can feel something watching me from the dark corners of the room. I don't know what that thing was or what it wanted. Part of me hopes I never find out. But another part of me is terrified that someday I'll wake up in the middle of the night and see that shadow at the foot of my bed again. And this time, maybe it won't just watch. The phone call. I've been hesitant to share this story, but I can't keep it to myself anymore. It happened about 3 months ago, and it's completely changed my life. I'm a 27-year-old guy, living with my wife Sarah in a small town in upstate New York. We've been married for 2 years, and everything was pretty normal until that night. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was working late at the office. Sarah was home alone, which wasn't unusual. I usually called her on my way home, just to check in and see if she needed me to pick up anything. Around 9 p.m., I decided to wrap up work and head home. I grabbed my phone to call Sarah, but it was dead. No big deal, I thought. I'd just surprise her when I got home. I walked in the door about 30 minutes later, expecting to find Sarah watching TV or reading like she usually does. Instead, the house was dark and quiet. Too quiet. "Sarah?" I called out. No answer. I started to get a little worried. Her car was in the driveway, so I knew she was home. I checked the living room, kitchen, even our bedroom. No sign of her. That's when I noticed the basement door was open. We rarely used the basement. It was mostly for storage, and Sarah hated going down there because it creeped her out. "Sarah?" I called again, standing at the top of the basement stairs. "Are you down there?" I heard a muffled sound from below. My heart started racing. I flipped on the light and slowly made my way down the stairs. What I saw when I reached the bottom still haunts me. Sarah was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, knees pulled up to her chest. She was shaking, her face pale and tear-streaked. "Sarah, what happened? Are you okay?" I rushed to her side. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. You called me," she whispered. "What? No, my phone was dead," I said, confused. She shook her head vigorously. "No, you called," I answered, and she broke off, sobbing. I held her, trying to calm her down. Eventually, she managed to tell me what happened. About an hour before I got home, she'd received a call from my number. When she answered, expecting to hear my voice, there was just silence for a few seconds. Then, a voice that sounded exactly like mine said, "Sarah, I need you to go check the basement." She said she felt uneasy, but figured I must have a reason for asking. She went to the basement door and called down, asking if I was there. The voice on the phone told her to go all the way down and check behind the old bookshelf. As she descended the stairs, the voice on the phone changed. It got deeper, more distorted. It started laughing, a horrible, inhuman sound. Terrified, she tried to run back up the stairs, but the basement door slammed shut. She said she could hear something moving around up there, heavy footsteps crossing the floor above. All the while, that awful laughter continued from the phone, which she'd dropped in her panic. She huddled in the corner, too scared to move or make a sound, until I came home. We called the police, but they couldn't find any evidence of an intruder. They suggested it might have been a prank call that spooked her, followed by her imagination running wild. But here's the thing. When I checked my phone after charging it, there was no record of any call made to Sarah that night. And when we listened to her phone's call history, There was no incoming call from my number. We moved out of that house the following week. Sarah still has nightmares about that voice, and to be honest, so do I. I can't shake the feeling that something was in our house that night. Something that could mimic my voice, that wanted to lure my wife into that basement for God knows what reason. I don't know if I believe in the supernatural, but I do know this. I'll never ignore a dead phone battery again. And I'll always make sure I know exactly where my wife is. Because the thought of what might have happened if I'd come home any later that night, it doesn't bear thinking about. The misplaced keys. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but I need to get it off my chest. It happened about a month ago, and I still can't shake the feeling of unease. I'm a 26-year-old guy living alone in a small apartment in downtown Chicago. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place on the third floor of an old building. It started on a Tuesday evening. I had just gotten home from work and was getting ready to head out to meet some friends for dinner. I went to grab my keys from the bowl by the door where I always keep them, but they weren't there. I figured I must have absent-mindedly put them somewhere else, so I started looking around. After about 10 minutes of searching, I was getting frustrated. I checked all the usual spots, my jacket pockets, the coffee table, even the fridge. Hey, it happens. No luck. I was about to give up and call my friends to cancel when I noticed something odd. My keys were sitting on the windowsill in my bedroom. I was sure I hadn't been in there since I got home. It was weird, but I shrugged it off. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. The next day, it happened again. This time, I distinctly remembered putting my keys in the bowl when I got home, but when I went to leave for work, they were gone. After a frantic search, I found them in the bathroom, balanced on the edge of the sink. Now I was starting to get freaked out. I lived alone, and I knew I hadn't put them there. I started paying more attention, double-checking where I put my keys, even taking photos on my phone to prove to myself where I'd left them. But it kept happening. Every day, my keys would disappear from where I'd left them and show up in increasingly bizarre places. On top of the fridge, inside a shoe in my closet, balanced on the blade of the ceiling fan. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. Was I sleepwalking? Did I have some kind of dissociative disorder? I even set up my laptop to record my living room overnight, but the video just showed an empty room. The keys still moved. About a week into this, things escalated. I came home from work to find my keys in the middle of my bed. But this time, there was something else. The bed was slightly rumpled, as if someone had been sitting on it. And there, on my pillow, was a single long dark hair. I don't have long hair. My blood ran cold. Someone had been in my apartment. Someone was messing with me. But how were they getting in? I checked all the windows and doors, but there was no sign of forced entry. I changed the locks, but it didn't help. The key relocations continued, each one leaving me more terrified than the last. In the pocket of a jacket I hadn't worn in months, tucked into the pages of a book on my shelf, hanging from the shower head. I couldn't sleep. Every noise made me jump. I felt like I was being watched constantly. I started staying with friends, making excuses about fumigation or plumbing issues in my building. But even when I wasn't there, I'd come back to find my keys had moved. The final straw came last week. I hadn't been to my apartment in 3 days. I walked in, already dreading what I might find. My keys were on the kitchen counter, arranged to spell out 2 words, "Welcome home." I ran. I didn't even pack a bag. I just ran out of there and went straight to the police station. They took my statement, searched my apartment, but found nothing. No signs of break-in, no fingerprints, no evidence at all of anyone else being there. I'm staying with my parents now, looking for a new place. I told my landlord some BS about a job transfer. How could I explain the real reason? I don't know who was in my apartment or how they were getting in. I don't want to know, but I can't shake the feeling that they're still watching me, waiting. And every time I reach for my keys, I'm terrified of where I might find them next. So if your keys ever start showing up in places you know you didn't leave them, don't ignore it. Don't try to rationalize it. Just get out, because you might not be as alone as you think you are. The locked room. I've never been the type to believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, but what happened to me last month has me questioning everything. I'm a 23-year-old guy living with my parents in this old house we moved into about a year ago. It's a big place, way too big for just the three of us, but my parents got it cheap because of some vague issues with the previous owners. There's this room on the second floor that's always been locked. My parents said it was just storage and that the real estate agent had lost the key. We never really thought much about it, you know? Just one of those quirks old houses have. Anyway, about a month ago, my parents went on a weekend trip, leaving me alone in the house. It was Friday night and I was just chilling in my room, playing video games. Around midnight, I started hearing these weird noises. At first, I thought it was just the house settling. Old houses make all sorts of sounds, right? But then I heard something that made my blood run cold. It sounded like footsteps coming from directly above me, the locked room. I paused my game and listened. The footsteps continued, slow and deliberate, pacing back and forth. My heart was racing. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a raccoon or something that had gotten in through the attic. I grabbed my phone and texted my dad. "Hey, did you guys ever find the key to that locked room?" His response came a few minutes later. "No. Why?" I didn't want to freak him out, so I just said I was curious. But the footsteps were getting louder, more insistent. I knew I had to check it out. I grabbed a flashlight and slowly made my way upstairs. The noise stopped as soon as I reached the second floor. I stood there in the dark hallway, my flashlight beam shaking as I pointed it at the locked door. That's when I noticed something odd. There was a faint light coming from under the door. Just a sliver, but definitely there. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the flashlight. I don't know what came over me, but I found myself walking towards the door. As I got closer, I could hear something. It sounded like whispering? Multiple voices, too quiet to make out what they were saying. I pressed my ear against the door, holding my breath. The whispering got louder, but I still couldn't understand the words. It didn't sound like any language I'd ever heard. Suddenly, something slammed against the other side of the door. I jumped back, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The impact was followed by scratching sounds, like something was trying to claw its way through the wood. I ran back to my room and locked the door, my mind racing. What the hell was in that room? I spent the rest of the night huddled in my bed, listening to the sounds of movement and whispers coming from upstairs. When morning came, everything was quiet. I cautiously went to check the locked room again. The door was still closed, no sign of damage, and no light coming from underneath. It was like nothing had happened. I didn't tell my parents when they got back. What could I say? That I heard impossible things coming from a room that's supposed to be empty? They'd think I was crazy. But here's the thing that really freaks me out. A few days later, I overheard my parents talking. Apparently, the issues with the previous owners, the family that lived here before us, had a teenage son who went missing. They never found him, but his parents swore up and down that they could hear him in that locked room, even though it was empty every time they checked. I don't know what to believe anymore. All I know is that I dread nighttime now. Because sometimes, when the house is quiet and dark, I can still hear those whispers coming from upstairs. And lately, they've started to sound like they're getting closer to my door. I'm writing this as a warning. If you ever move into a house with a mysteriously locked room, don't ignore it. Don't try to open it. And whatever you do, don't listen too closely to what might be on the other side. The broken window. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but I need to get it off my chest. It happened about 2 months ago, and I still have trouble sleeping at night. I'm a 28-year-old guy living alone in a small apartment in the suburbs of Chicago. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place on the second floor of an old building. It was a Tuesday night, around 11 p.m. I was up late binge-watching a new series on Netflix, trying to wind down after a long day at work. The neighborhood was quiet, as usual. That's one of the reasons I chose this place. It's generally pretty peaceful. I had just started another episode when I heard it. A sharp, distinct sound of glass breaking. At first, I thought it might have come from the show, but I quickly realized it was too loud, too real. It came from somewhere inside my apartment. My heart started racing. I paused the show and listened intently. For a few seconds, there was nothing but silence. Then I heard it. A soft thud, like someone trying to move quietly but bumping into something. I lived alone. There shouldn't be anyone else in my apartment. I slowly got up from the couch, trying not to make a sound. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. Should I call the cops? Try to confront the intruder? Hide? Before I could decide, I heard another noise. It was coming from my bedroom. Whoever it was, they were in there now. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I started to dial 911, but stopped. What if they heard me talking? Instead, I sent a quick text to my neighbor Mike. "Someone's in my apartment. Call 911. I knew I should probably just leave, get out of there as fast as I could. But something kept me rooted to the spot. I needed to know what was happening, who was in my home. Slowly, as quietly as I could, I made my way towards the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see a sliver of darkness beyond. As I got closer, I could hear something. It sounded like breathing. Heavy, ragged breathing. I was terrified, but I couldn't stop myself. I reached out and gently pushed the door open a bit more. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was someone, or something, crouched in the corner of my room. It was too dark to make out details, but I could see the outline. It didn't look right. The proportions were off somehow, like its limbs were too long. I must have made a sound because suddenly its head snapped towards me. I saw two eyes reflect the light from the living room, glowing in the darkness. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The figure started to move, unfolding itself from the corner. It seemed to keep growing taller as it stood. I turned and ran. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. I just needed to get out. I sprinted for the front door, fumbling with the lock with shaking hands. I could hear it coming after me, heavy footsteps getting closer. Just as I got the door open, I felt something brush against my back. I didn't look back. I ran out into the hallway, down the stairs, and out of the building. I ran until I reached the lit street corner where I finally stopped, gasping for air. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. The police arrived a few minutes later. They searched my apartment thoroughly but found nothing. No intruder, no signs of forced entry. The window was intact. They suggested it might have been a vivid nightmare. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. I moved out the next day. I couldn't stay there anymore. I'm in a new place now, but I still can't shake the feeling of being watched. Sometimes, late at night, I think I can hear that heavy breathing again. I don't know what was in my apartment that night. I don't want to know, but I can't forget those glowing eyes in the darkness, or the way that figure seemed to unfold itself, growing impossibly tall. I'm writing this as a warning. Always trust your instincts. And if you ever hear an unexplained noise in your home at night, don't investigate. Just get out. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows. Creepy laughter. I've never been the type to believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, but what happened to me when I was 13 has haunted me for years. I'm 24 now and I still can't explain it. I've never told anyone this story before, but I need to get it off my chest. It was a Friday night in October. My parents had gone out for their anniversary dinner, leaving me home alone for the first time. I was pretty excited about it. Felt like I was finally growing up, you know? Our house was this old Victorian-style place, built in the 1920s. It had all these creaky floorboards and weird noises that I was used to. But being alone made everything seem louder. I was in the living room, playing video games and enjoying my freedom. It was around 9 p.m. when I first heard it, a faint sound of laughter. It was so quiet that I thought I might have imagined it. I paused my game and listened, but there was nothing. Shrugging it off, I went back to playing. But about 10 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it was clearer, definitely laughter, like a little kid giggling. It seemed to be coming from upstairs. My heart started racing. I knew I was alone in the house. We didn't have any pets, and all the windows were closed. I tried to rationalize it, Maybe it was the neighbors? But deep down, I knew the sound was coming from inside our house. I muted the TV and sat there, straining to hear. For a few minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then, just as I was about to relax, I heard it again. A high-pitched giggle, followed by a deeper chuckle. It sounded like it was coming from my parents' bedroom. I was terrified, but also curious. Part of me wanted to go upstairs and check it out, but I was too scared to move. I just sat there, frozen, listening to this intermittent laughter echoing through the house. As time passed, the laughter got louder and more frequent. It no longer sounded like it was just coming from upstairs. I could hear it from the kitchen, the hallway, even right behind me at times. But every time I whipped around to look, there was nothing there. I tried to call my parents, but they weren't answering their phones. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That I was hearing laughter? They'd think I was crazy or pulling a prank. Around 11 p.m., things got worse. The laughter turned into words. I couldn't make out most of it, but I distinctly heard, "Come play with us," several times. It was like multiple voices speaking in unison, some high and childlike, others deep and adult. I was in full panic mode now. I ran to the front door, ready to bolt out of the house, but when I tried to open it, the knob wouldn't turn. It was like it was locked from the outside. That's when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy footsteps coming down. The laughter was all around me now, seeming to come from the very walls of the house. I backed into a corner, my eyes fixed on the staircase. The footsteps got closer and closer. I could see a shadow on the wall, growing larger as whatever it was reached the bottom of the stairs. Just as I thought I was about to see something emerge from the hallway, I heard a key in the lock. The front door opened, and my parents walked in. Instantly, all the noise stopped. The laughter, the footsteps, everything. My parents found me huddled in the corner, crying and shaking. They thought I'd just scared myself watching a horror movie or something. To this day, I don't know what happened that night. My parents don't believe me, and I've never been able to find any history of strange occurrences in that house. We moved out a year later for unrelated reasons, and as far as I know, the new owners haven't experienced anything unusual. But I know what I heard. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up thinking I can hear that laughter in the distance. And I always make sure I'm not alone in the house after dark. I don't know if it was ghosts, some kind of mass hallucination, or something else entirely. But whatever it was real, and it was terrifying. A knock at midnight. I've never been the type to believe in supernatural stuff, but what happened to me last month has me questioning everything. I'm a 28-year-old guy living alone in a small house on the outskirts of a rural town in Oregon. It's usually quiet out here, which is why I chose the place. But now, that silence is what terrifies me the most. It was a Friday night and I was up late binge-watching a new series on Netflix. Around 11:30 p.m., I decided to call it a night. I was just about to head to bed when I heard it, a knock at the front door. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Who would be knocking at this hour? I lived at least a mile from my nearest neighbor, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I paused, listening intently. Then it came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. My heart started racing. I approached the door cautiously, trying to see through the peephole, but it was too dark outside. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. I don't know what possessed me, but I found myself reaching for the doorknob. Just as my hand touched it, another knock came, so loud and sudden that I jumped back. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. Silence. I stood there for what felt like hours, my hand on the doorknob, heart pounding. Finally, I gathered my courage and opened the door. There was no one there. I stepped out onto my porch, looking around. The night was eerily still. No wind, no animal sounds, nothing. Just as I was about to go back inside, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the dirt of my front yard were footprints, but they weren't human footprints. They were huge, easily twice the size of my own feet, and they seemed to have claws. They led right up to my porch and then just stopped. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my mind racing. What the hell had been at my door? I ran to check all the windows, making sure they were locked. As I reached my bedroom window, I saw something that nearly stopped my heart. There, pressed against the glass, was a hand. But it wasn't a human hand. It was massive, with long, curved claws instead of fingernails. As I watched, frozen in terror, it slowly dragged down the window, leaving deep scratches in the glass. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet in my haste to get away. I could hear something moving around outside, circling the house. Heavy footsteps on the porch, more scratching at the windows. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. Of course, there never was great reception out here, but now it felt like a death sentence. The noises continued all night. Scratching, heavy breathing, occasional knocks that seemed to come from all around the house at once. I huddled in my bedroom closet, a baseball bat clutched in my sweaty hands, waiting for dawn. When morning finally came, the noises stopped. I cautiously emerged from my hiding spot and looked outside. The yard was a mess, with those strange footprints everywhere. Deep scratches marked every window and door. I called the police as soon as I had signal. They came out, took some pictures, but ultimately chalked it up to animal activity. But I know it wasn't any animal. At least, not any animal that should exist. I moved out that same day, stayed with a friend until I could find a new place in the city. I told everyone it was because I got a new job, but the truth is, I can't stand to be alone in a quiet place anymore. Because sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear those knocks. And every time I look out a window after dark, part of me is terrified I'll see that hand again, claws poised to scratch at the glass. I don't know what visited me that night. I don't want to know. But I do know this. If you ever hear a knock at your door late at night, especially if you're not expecting anyone, don't answer it. You never know what might be waiting on the other side.
We hope you enjoyed this chilling tale. If it sent shivers down your spine, give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part? Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky and remember, sometimes the darkest shadows hide the most terrifying secret.